Okay, so we're using the information that we found in yesterday's video, yesterday's class. We have this rational function right here. We're going to use the vertical asymptotes, the horizontal asymptotes, the x-intercepts, and the y-intercepts to graph our function. Now remember, I told you I use a key, so anytime I do vertical asymptotes, I use yellow. Whenever I do horizontal, I use green. When I do x and y intercepts, I use blue. Okay, so that's where we're going to start. We're going to start by just basically graphing all of the information that we found. So start with our vertical asymptotes. So we have a vertical asymptote at -4, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's my vertical asymptote at -4, and at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, +6. So that's where my vertical asymptotes are. Now, my horizontal asymptote is at 3. So x equals 3, that's a horizontal line, so it's right here at 3, like that. And then my x-intercepts are right here at 0, 0, and -2, 0, like that. Okay? Now, we're using this information here to graph the rest. So how many pieces am I going to have to draw? Well, since I have two vertical asymptotes here, one here and one here, I'm going to have 3 pieces that I'm going to have to draw. Okay, so let's start with the left and the right side because those are the easiest parts. So as I said in my last video, what's not there is just as important as what is there. Okay, so if I'm focusing here on this left side, on this side of the asymptote, okay, I have 2 options at this point. My graph can go 2 ways. It can either come down here and go out that way because a function's not going to cross this vertical asymptote. My other option is going to be coming up here, so it either look like this or it's going to look like this because a function follows its asymptotes, right? Well, looking at this, I know it cannot be the bottom piece. Why can't it be the bottom piece? Well, look what happens right here. What happens here? My function comes up here and it crosses the x-axis. Is my function allowed to do that there? Is it allowed to cross the x-axis there? Absolutely not. The only 2 places that my function can cross are right here and here. Those are my only 2 x-intercepts. So since this one cannot cross the x-axis, it cannot be this part. So we know for a fact that since there's no x-intercept, it has to be up here. And the same thing on the other side, on the right side, on this side. Notice on this part here, on this x-axis, there's no x-intercept here. So that means that my function has to be up there. Because if it were down here, again, it would cross the x-axis, and I'm only allowed to do that at 0 and -2. Okay? Now, all we have left is this middle piece, right here in the middle. I have 2 x-intercepts. Now, looking at my root behavior over here on my function, both of these x-intercepts are power 1, which means that they are going to cross the x-axis. Okay? So basically, since it crosses here and here, I have 2 options. Okay, either it's going to do this, cross, and then cross back down and go like that, or it's going to come like this and cross back up. Those are my 2 options. There's only one way to find out, and that's to plug in a point and find out where it is. So I'm going to use -1. I'm going to plug in -1 and do a sign chart for my function. Okay, so when x equals -1, my sign chart, my first factor is going to be negative. When I plug it in here, it's going to be negative. When I plug it into my second one, it's going to be positive. On the bottom, I'm going to get negative, because when I plug it in here, it's going to be negative, and when I plug it here, it's going to be positive. Okay. Now, positive divided by positive is positive, but a negative divided by negative makes these two positive. So basically, at -1, I'm at the positive side. So I'm going to draw a point right here at -1 on the positive side. And now, using those 3 points, since all we have to do is connect the dots, basically it has to go through those 3 points, so it has to look like that. And there's our rational function. So again, if we can use the information that we have or the information that we don't have, in the case of these x-intercepts here, we can draw things really easily, and then sometimes we actually have to plug in a value to find out where we're sitting. Okay? Really simple. Now, let's look at the second one. Same thing. I'm going to start off by drawing all my information. So this one has 3 vertical asymptotes. Okay, one at -3, so 1, 2, 3. One at 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And one at 7, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Now I have a horizontal asymptote at 0. And then my x-intercepts are at 2, 0 and 6 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I have a y-intercept at 0, 1/7. So I'm just going to put it right there in the middle between 0 and 1. Okay, because I'm not going to sit here and argue where 1/7 is. So as long as it's between 0 and 1, I'm good. Okay? Now, let's do the easiest part first. The easiest part is going to be right here in this middle area. Since I have 2 points, I know that this root is power 1, so it crosses. And I have these 2 points, I know it's going to look like this, because it has to cross and it has to come through that point. And the only way it does that is if it looks like that. Okay? Now, unlike the last one, for the left and the right side, I can't automatically tell what's going on. I don't have an x-intercept, but that means that my function could be going up on this side or down on this side. Either it's all up here or it's all down here, and the same thing for the other side. So those two I'm going to have to plug in points, and the same thing right here, I'm going to have to plug in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? So I'm going to have to do this 3 times, or I'm going to have to plug in a point and find out where my function is. And again, remember, it doesn't matter what the value is so much as what the sign of it is, because everything up here is positive and everything down here is negative. So let's start with that. I'm going to say, okay, when x is -10, when I plug in -10, I get a negative on top, and then negative, negative, negative. And again, a negative makes positive, and negative makes positive. So this thing nets negative. So I'm on this side. So I know that this left side is on the negative side down here. And it can't cross because there's no x-intercept, and you're not allowed to cross a vertical asymptote. So the left side's done. Now let's do the right side. I'm going to use +10. When you plug in +10, you get positive on top. On the bottom, you get positive, positive, positive. So on the right side, we're on the positive side. So it's up there. Now we've got to do this middle piece. So we're going to plug in +5. When I plug in +5, I get positive, negative on top, positive, negative, positive on the bottom, and negative makes positive. So here, I'm going to plot a point on the positive side at 5, And that gives me my 2 points to know that it looks like this. And that is how you graph rational functions using the horizontal asymptote, the vertical asymptotes, the x and the y intercepts.